became interested in seeking and serving himself chiefly. And in that chapter there, the sinner's need of Christ, she says in the first sentence of the first paragraph, man was originally endowed with noble powers and a well-balanced mind. He was perfect in his being and in harmony with God. He was in what, everyone? In harmony with God. His thoughts were pure, his aims were holy. Now listen to this. But through disobedience, his powers were perverted and selfishness took the place of love. What took the place of love? Selfishness. So when Ellen White says there that he became a partaker of the satanic nature, she's not saying anything more or anything less than man became, at his very essence, at his core, a selfish being. Selfishness, she says, took the place of love. Selfishness became the modus operandi in the nature of man, looking out for me, me, me. What helps me to get to the top? What helps me to get exalted, even at the expense of others? And isn't this exactly what Satan promised in the tree? When he was speaking to Eve, didn't he say, if you partake of this fruit, you shall be as what? God's. Here he is investing her. He is seeking to infuse into Eve his own desire to be as God. He's saying, if you partake of this, you will be exalted. And when Adam and Eve partook, the love that God had put in, that natural, selfless love, was superseded. It was replaced by selfishness. And this is why Ellen White says in unequivocal language, man became the enemy of God, a partaker of the satanic nature. Paul said, no man ever yet hated his own flesh. Jesus said, the second is like unto it. You love your neighbor just as you love yourself. As Seventh-day Adventists, we have been commissioned to preach the great controversy. Can you say amen? The great controversy is the worldview. It is the meta-narrative through which Seventh-day Adventists perceive, compartmentalize, and internalize every bit of information that comes to them. You're driving down the highway, you see a billboard, and you compartmentalize the message of that billboard against the backdrop of your paradigm, your theme, your meta-narrative for understanding the whole world, and that is that there is a great controversy going on between Christ and Satan. Everything for the Seventh-day Adventist is seen against this larger backdrop. The stage on which all of this world is playing out is a conflict between two motives. Between two what, everyone? Two great principles. In Revelation chapter 12 and verse 7 it says, and there was war in heaven. The Greek word rendered war there is polemia, from whence we derive our English word polemic. It means an argument. Now this is not to say, I don't want to in any sense deny that there may well have been a physical element to the war there in heaven, but the main issue about the war in heaven was over the character of God and Satan seeking to invest God with his own attributes, namely a desire for selfish exaltation. That's what the war was over. It wasn't a war with bazookas, tanks, swords, and spears. There may have been a physical element, but it was chiefly a war of words and ideas. And even today, you and I exist on this great battlefield. Today, we live, we breathe on this great battlefield, this great stage in which all of the great controversy is playing out. We will either align ourselves with what? The principle of selfless love, i.e. Christ and His character, God and His character, or we will align ourselves with the principle of selfish exaltation, i.e. the character of Satan. And that's where Adam was when he fell. He had changed allegiances. He had changed, what did I say? Allegiances. Now, just so there can be no misunderstanding here, let me just read you 3 quick statements from the pen of Ellen White. All one sentence long. It will be easy to grasp. The Workers' Bulletin, September 9th, 1902. All sin is selfishness. Let's say that together. All sin is selfishness. Next one. Signs of the Times, April 13th, 1891. Selfishness is sin. Now notice that's remarkable there, because if you know much about math, and no doubt you do, the word that we utilize in the English language to connote the equals symbol is the word is. So we would say 2 plus 2 equals 4. We would say 2 plus 2 is 4. Does that make sense? Yes or no? So notice this. This is absolutely remarkable. It's just like having 1 plus 1 equals 2. On this side, she says all sin equals selfishness. And on this side, she says selfishness equals sin. These two things are synonymous. There, what word did I say? If all sin is selfishness and all selfishness is sin, and sin began through self-exaltation and self-seeking, then we are dealing with the sin problem here, the derangement that took place in the character and nature of man. Where? In the garden. Now, go with me to Isaiah chapter 14. And if you can hang on for the ride here, you will see this concept, this great cosmic truth, distilled down in two parallel passages. And you will see it by the grace of God with clarity. Isaiah chapter 14. Isaiah what chapter, everyone? Now, you tell me, Bible students, what's happening in Isaiah 14? The fall of Lucifer. That's exactly right. Isaiah chapter 14. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, which didst weaken the nations? How is this possible? The prophet of God is incredulous. How could this happen? How are you fallen from heaven? He's beside himself. How could this have transpired? And Ellen White says if we could give a reason for sin, we could excuse sin. It is the mystery of iniquity. It is non-explicable. How could a perfect being in a perfect environment with a perfect architecture and a perfect creator do something imperfect? I don't understand it. I don't pretend to understand it. It's the mystery of iniquity. The what of iniquity, everyone? And is a mystery something you do know or don't know? Something you don't know. Don't even try to wrap your fingers around that one. Impossible. It is an insuperable obstacle to try and understand how sin could have even begun. The point is that it did. And Isaiah the prophet calls out, how is it happened, O Lucifer, that you're fallen? And then he begins to give us a little picture. He begins to give us the picture into the inner workings of the mind of Lucifer. Now watch it. Beginning in verse 13. What verse, everyone? Verse 13. Now I want you to notice, in verses 13 and 14, the emphasis on upward motion. The emphasis on what two words did I say? Upward motion. What we're actually going to find here is 6 references to Lucifer's desire to move not downward but upward. Now follow this very carefully. Beginning in verse 13. You said in your heart. You said in your what? Heart. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. So the heart here is just a Hebrew way of saying the mind that also includes the emotions, okay? So you have said in your heart, it could have just as easily read, you have said in your mind. You have internally said this. What did he say? You have said in your heart, I will, what's the next word? Ascend. What direction is that? Up. I will ascend into heaven above the stars of God. Step up number 1. I will ascend into heaven above the stars of God. Notice the direction that Lucifer wanted to go. Step number 2. I will set my throne on high. Set my throne where, everyone? Notice, he didn't want his throne to be low. He wanted his throne to be high. I will exalt my throne above the stars. I will set my throne on high. Step up number 3. I will sit on the mount of assembly. The mountain of assembly. A mountain is tall or a mountain is short and low. Tall. So here's the 3rd step up. I will sit on the mount. 4th, in the farthest reaches of the north. If you look at a map, north is what direction? Up. 4 steps up. Up, up, up. Notice verse 14. I will ascend, there it is again, above the heights of the clouds. 5th step up. The last part of verse 14, I will make myself like the Most High. 6th step up. If we wanted to distill Satan's, Lucifer's motivation down to a single sentence, to a single easily graspable concept, it would be, he desired to move himself upward at the expense of others. I want to say that again. He desired to move himself up at the expense of what? Others. That is Satanism. Now, we sometimes think of